In this video, you will know the key Bitcoin levels to watch heading into Q4 of 2026. What could signal the crypto market is forming a major bottom, and how to recognize when the next major market cycle may be beginning. Let's head in. Now, let's start off taking a look at the Bitcoin daily chart. When we look at the daily chart, one thing stands out the most, and that is this purple moving average, which is the 200-day SMA or simple moving average. Now, we can see that all of this year, that 200 SMA has been serving as resistance for Bitcoin. And we actually made our way up to it back in May of 2026, and we got rejected. Now, it looks like Bitcoin could be on the verge of heading back up for that 200 SMA to go for another test. And that's something I'm watching very closely. Now, if Bitcoin does head up to that 200 SMA to test it as resistance, the question is it going to break through or will it get rejected? Now, we can look at both scenarios. One scenario would be Bitcoin getting rejected. Now, if Bitcoin gets rejected at this 200 SMA, that would look something like this, where Bitcoin worked its way up and reached it somewhere around 69, 70K. And from there, maybe tested it a couple times and then rejected. And if it rejected there, the probabilities of a lower low being made become higher. And if that does happen, I think that we could see Bitcoin slip down, possibly below 50K if that happens. If we get another test of the 200, and we get rejected, the probabilities of Bitcoin slipping down towards 50K, possibly below, become higher. Now, if Bitcoin is able to break through the 200, then it could look something like this, where Bitcoin heads up, it forms a bullish pattern around that 200, and then it breaks above the 200. Now, if it did break above the 200, there's a particular level that I'm watching, and that's this low volume gap right here. It's not that low, but it's low enough where we could see Bitcoin head up into that level and the market grab liquidity there. And if that happens, we could see Bitcoin push as high as 78K. Maybe the market decides to head higher just to grab more liquidity, get more money in the market. And then from there, I'd be watching for a rejection. And if that did happen, we could see something like this, where Bitcoin came down and formed the lower low, and that could take us into our bear market bottom. Now, one thing I do want to do, though, is zoom out on a weekly chart, because when we take a look at the weekly chart, that allows us to get a bird's eye view of the market and to look at things at a higher time frame. It just gives more clarity and allows you to get a better sense of direction. So let's switch over to the weekly chart. And from here, we can zoom out quite a bit. And at this level, things become pretty clear. We can see clearly that Bitcoin is in a downtrend. And we can see that Bitcoin topped off at October of 2025. And once it topped off, we see that it broke below the 21-week EMA, exponential moving average. It broke below that, which is the yellow line. And that 21 EMA served as a resistance ever since. You see here, it did break above a little bit around May, but it got rejected. And ever since then, it's pretty much just been hugging this purple 200 weekly SMA. It's just been hugging it. And it's like, in indecision right now. So the question now, though, that we want to look at is Bitcoin going to hold support at this 200 level, or will it break support and fall below? Now, the probabilities of it falling below, I would say are higher because of the time of the market cycle that we're in. We're pretty much towards the tail end of the bear market. I would say we have another couple months, maybe 3 months left. So if Bitcoin is going to do something, it needs to do it pretty soon, right? Now, one thing that I'd be looking for is as an indicator, okay? Because we're talking about signals that the market is forming a major bottom. So one signal that I'm looking for is this 21 EMA crossing below this 200 SMA. If it crosses below this 200 SMA before the end of Q4, I would actually say before the end of November, October, somewhere around that time frame, if it crosses below before that happens, then more than likely we'll see a lower low. Okay. The current low for this bear market is 57.7K. If we see the 21 cross below the 200, then we'd be looking for a lower low. And that's where I'd be watching for the bear market bottom to occur. Okay. Now, if it doesn't cross below the 21 does not cross below the 200, then it's possible that this was our low. Likely, less likely, but it's a possibility, okay, that this was a low. And if that is the case, we could do something as simple as like maybe draw a trend line here. And, we could say, maybe the market's going to do something like this where it maybe, comes up here, comes back down here, comes up here a bit, comes back down here, and then we recover. Okay. Something like that. That's a possibility. Okay. That's a possibility. What is this thing doing? But um, one thing we can do though is let's take a look at the previous two market cycles and let's sample some of that data because that's going to help us to determine what could possibly happen this cycle based on what's happened in the past. So let's take a look at the 2021 bear market. Okay. Now, the 2021 bear market, we see that the market topped off around November of 2021. And then we went into our bear market. We lost that 21 EMA. It became resistance, resistance, resistance. Okay. And we saw that the 21 eventually crossed below the 200. Now, what happened when it crossed below the 200? It was only a matter of a few weeks after it made that cross that we got a lower low. And that lower low took us down to our bear market bottom. Okay, that marked the bottom of the bear market of the previous cycle. Okay. Now let's go back another cycle. Let's go back to 2017. And if we look at 2017 and we look at that bear market, we see something interesting. The 21 EMA never crossed below the 200 EMA, the 200 SMA. It never crossed below. And another interesting thing is that the 200 SMA served as perfect support at the bear market bottom for Bitcoin. Perfect support. We never broke that 200 level. Now, an interesting thing, though, is that if we look at the previous market cycle in 2021, we did break the 200. Okay. We broke it, we recovered, and then we just lost it completely. Okay. Now, if we look at the current cycle, it's kind of in between the two, right? We lost it, but we've been pretty much holding it. We recovered and pretty much holding it. But being that we've lost it, you can look at that as like a crack in the ground. Okay. And if we hit it again, there's a possibility that crack will break. And if that crack breaks, then we could completely lose it and head down for our bear market bottom. And that's, would be, we see the 21 cross below and we'll see our bear market bottom. Okay. So what I'd say at this point is that the probability of Bitcoin forming a lower low than what it's already done is pretty high because we've already lost the 200, even though we did recover it. we've lost it. Just like the previous cycle, we lost it, we recovered briefly, and then we totally lost it. So, um, so that's, the weekly chart. That's what I'm watching on a weekly. Very simple TA, nothing complicated. We don't need all these, these mega indicators and rainbow charts and all that. We can just look at what's happening, look at the moving averages, look at the previous market cycles, and it gives us a better sense of what most likely will happen this cycle. Even though we don't know, we know what to look for. Okay. Now, another thing we want to do though is we want to look at the monthly chart. The monthly chart is going to give you that eagle eye bird view, eagle eye view. So let's take a look at the monthly chart. Now, if we take a look at the monthly chart, let's remove this trend line here. One thing that we can see is that we have the 21 EMA, which we have lost. We have the 50 SMA, which we are holding. Okay. Now, if we look at the previous market, we lost the 21 and we lost the 50. Excuse me. We didn't regain the 50 until we were in the recovery phase. But we've actually sort of lost the 50 and recovered it. That's where we are right now. So kind of like in limbo, right? But if we lose this 50 and close and make a lower low, then all of this becomes fair game, all the way down to about 39K. Okay. And so that's what we're watching, the 50 SMA on the monthly chart. That's what we're watching. Okay. And if we lose that, this becomes fair game. Now, another thing we can do on a monthly is we can draw a fib. Okay. So what we can do is we can look at the bottom of the previous bear market, and that's right around here. So we're going to draw a fib right at that level, right down there. Okay. And we're going to draw it to the top of the previous bull market. Okay. So we draw a fib. And what we see when we draw that fib is that our golden pocket, the golden ratio level, is right in this region that we're watching, between 57K and 39K. So this is all fair game. Okay. Let's switch back over to the weekly chart, and let's take another look at that on the weekly. Okay. And what we can see is that the bottom of this fib, we can see the volume profile indicator has a node, a high volume node. And all of this is like a low volume gap that we're looking at right here. So what this is telling me is that this low that we made back in June, if we lose this low, there's a high probability that the price will accelerate, and we'll see another one of these kinds of drops, and we'll accelerate down into this gap and capture all that liquidity that's going to serve as a foundation for the recovery phase of the next bull market. Okay. So I'd say the probabilities of this is really high. It's possible that we see something in between what we saw in 2017, 2018, and what we saw 2021, 2022. And if we saw something like that, then instead of us coming all the way down and filling this gap, maybe we'll come down to here, 48K. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all the market needs, So that's what I'm watching, as we head into Q4 of 2026. And these are some of the signals that we can watch to know when the market is forming a major bottom. And we also can use some of these signals to recognize when the next market cycle might be beginning. I hope you found value in this video, and look forward to seeing you again. Peace.